I feel like a visitor, but I feel like an invited guest. So we'll open the Finance Committee meeting up. Good morning to everyone. I hope my volume is coming across well.
Great, just joined.
So far, my 5G connection seems like it's holding. So I'm going to assume that you guys hear me well right now. As Marty said, Jim is out of town, and he's asked me to help out in pinch hitting and fulfilling my duties as vice chair and running this meeting. So we're going to get going. I'm going to ask Michael if you could please call the roll.
Alderman Bauman. Alderman Bauman.
Mr. Bauman, you're muted.
Why don't we continue?
Mr. Mark Flaherty. Mr. Jim Cantor. Mr. Scott Mansky.
Here.
Mr. Greg Marcus.
Here.
Ms. Aikasawa.
Here.
And Mr. Grady Crosby.
I am here.
We have a quorum.
Alderman Bauman, if you can hear this, your microphone has been muted. Could you indicate if you are on the line and in attendance to the meeting?
Yeah, we'll check in periodically with Alderman Bauman. Maybe he had to step away for a second or had to take another call.
Okay.
But we'll check in. So, but since we have a quorum present, we'll keep moving forward. Our first order of business are the minutes of the last committee meeting. And I think they've been sent out for your perusal and your approval. Are there any recommended changes, modifications, or corrections? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the last committee meeting as transmitted.
Move approval.
So moved.
Any discussion? We've had a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding the motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for the voice vote. Any opposed? All right, so that motion carries. The next item is our financial update. And so I'm gonna pass it over to the capable hands of Steve Marsh, who's gonna take us through that, that information.
Wow.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Today's financial update will include a final review of the 2020 income statement, a look at the 2021 income statement forecast, and a review of the projected restricted and unrestricted cash positions for the remainder of 2021, which are expected to remain healthy and relatively stable throughout the year. So let's start with the 2020 income statement, which is the first page of your financial packet that I distributed via email Tuesday night, and I think page 6 of the PDF that Michael sent out. This has column IDs E, F, G, and H at the top. This exhibit provides a comparison of the final, actual, unaudited year-end results to our 2020 budget. Scrolling down to line 67, in column E, you'll see net income before depreciation was budgeted at $21 million. Our actual year-end result was a $9.3 million loss, noted in column F. This produced a negative variance to budget of $30 million, noted in column G. 12 months ago, I'm not sure I would have thought it possible for our organization to overcome a $30 million negative swing on our income statement. Quite frankly, I think that I would have thought that would have been financial ruin for the district. However, as we sit here today, we've proven quite the opposite. We certainly suffered financial challenges, just as so many other businesses have during this pandemic, and we still have work to do. But in the early weeks of the pandemic, management developed and executed a two-pronged survival program that included, number one, an operational expense mitigation plan, and number two, a capital restructuring plan that, in combination, positioned us to weather the worst of the COVID storm. And while survival was certainly a sufficient and acceptable goal for 2020, we went one step further and doubled down on our own future and borrowed over $400 million to fund what will become a critically important economic driver for our city and region for years to come. You've heard me and Marty reference BPX often during these meetings. This is our credo of how we go about doing our business on a day in and day out basis. And in that vein, I can say without pretension that I am proud of the work and sacrifice our team has put in over the last year that allowed us as an organization to survive 2020 while simultaneously building for the future. And I'm thankful for the trust that the board has given to management to not only adopt our recommendations to get through this pandemic, but then having the confidence in us to execute them effectively. 3 years from now, when we open the doors of the expanded convention center for the first time, I think we'll look back at 2020 and say that it was an inflection point for our organization in terms of how we value the present and how we think about and plan for the future. That was a bit of hyperbole in that summary of our income statement, but I think it accurately reflects my thoughts regarding 2020 and what that $30 million variance on our income statement really means. Marty, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that was, you hadn't shared those comments with me, and they were inspirational, Steve. Really nicely stated. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's turn the page to page 8 of your packet, which has column ID M, N, O, and P.
Ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
So back on E, F, G, and H, line 65, bond interest expense.
Yes.
So the dollar amount that you have there, the budget 16.7 and the year-to-date actual 21.6. I think the reason that you had said previously is because because of the new issuance?
That's right, Scott. That's related to the expansion financing issuance. So that accrual at the end of the calendar year, plus some of the transaction expenses are rolled into that number.
So the part that I'm not seeing, I see that you have a cash flow statement later. Okay.
That's right.
It says where your cash balance is at and where your bond is at. But I'm not seeing, and I don't know if that comes in your financial statements, where I can see a reconciliation in essence between the $30 million loss and how your cash did. In essence, a statement of cash flow or something of that nature. Because, for example, your bonds, I'm wanting to know what is happening to the accumulated surplus deficit.
Understood. Yeah, Scott, that'll be part of the audit report that Baker Tilly walks us through next month in May. And we can certainly provide that information to you in advance of that meeting. And if there's questions prior to that committee meeting, you and I can get on the phone and talk through that.
But my assumption is that a lot of your interest is going to be as it was in the past, where it will in essence accumulate and your cash flow will be at a later date for those items.
That's right. So a lot of all of the expansion debt are capital appreciation bonds. So the first payment on those bonds isn't until 2027. So we'll be accruing interest each year up until that point before we start making payments. So that'll show up on the balance sheet as accrued interest. And then once we start making those payments, that accrued interest balance will start decreasing.
Okay. Because that will be an interesting item to watch for the future. Thank you.
Understood. Any other questions on that page? Okay. Page 8 of the packet with column IDs M, N, O, and P at the top. You'll see not much has changed from our last forecast that we provided to the board in February. You'll see on line 67, column O, we're up about $500,000, largely a result of better than forecasted December tax results, which is noted on line 35, column O. One item to note on this page is naming rights revenue, line 11. For both 2020 and 2021, we reduced our projected revenue by $43,750 per year as we worked with UWM on revised terms for the current contract year due to the pandemic. Marty, do you want to
Sure.
talk about that a little bit?
Back in October, the university reached out to us and expressed concerns about the monies that they were due to pay us July of 20, based upon the naming rights agreement that we have with them for the Panther Arena. We were in discussion for really until 2-3 weeks ago with the university over what, if any, adjustment there would be. They took a very reasonable position, albeit reasonable yet contrary to ours, that because of the pandemic, they were not responsible to pay anything for the naming rights for this past year, covered by the force majeure language. In discussions with Kirk Pelican, our counsel, we took what we believe to be a more reasonable position, which had them owing us money, but we chose to acknowledge that there certainly was an impact based on COVID and the occupancy of the arena during the past year. So we offered, and they ultimately accepted, a reduction in their payment for their contract year, which is July through June. So we took that, we recognize that shortfall in both the 2020 final, and we will be carrying that forward in our 2021 budget number. But we've reached agreement to that. I think both sides feel very comfortable with the resolution that was made in the spirit of the partnership between us and the university.
Okay, thank you, Marty. So we are almost finished with the 2020 audit field work. If there are any other changes to accounts, I would expect them to be very minor and immaterial at this point. And as I stated just before, Baker Tilly will be here at the May committee and board meetings to provide the final 2020 audit report. So to the next page, final look at the 2020 CapEx budget. Our total expenditures came in about $500K less than originally budgeted. Reducing CapEx spend was part of our expense mitigation strategy that was adopted in April of 2020 when the pandemic first hit, in order to preserve cash for ongoing operational needs. To that end, we prioritized projects that focused on life safety and security, as well as making smart investments in systems and infrastructure that are critical to the business operation. I'm proud, once again, of how our operations and building services and facilities departments have certainly made smart decisions that have set us up for success in 2020 and beyond. Are there any questions regarding the 2020 income statement or CapEx summary?
Could you explain line 16?
The theater foundation reinforcement, yeah. Well, that was simply a project we had to undertake in our theater basement location to strengthen the foundation of the building. It's something that we had been monitoring over the last several years, and 2020 was the time in which we had budgeted to get it done, and it was
Well, it was also tied to the fact that we knew, we had anticipated when we put this budget together that the Democratic National Convention was going to be as robust as initially thought, and the area that we needed to, that concerned us, was the western side of a portion of the theater that we were concerned with the amount of heavy traffic for television trucks and materials coming in. We were uncomfortable with how that foundation was shored up. We had had a number of different engineering studies done. The initial budgeted number for that project, I believe, was about $450,000. And the reason why there's such a high variance is that once they got in there, they saw that the work was more robust than it needed to be, and we were able to divert funds from other projects to support that overage. As it turns out, the ENC was different than what we had anticipated. However, long term, we would have had to address that anyway, Scott. It was just a matter of accelerating that because of the anticipated increased activity along 6th Street and what that vibration could potentially do to the sidewalk in the building itself.
Does this address the issue then?
Oh, completely.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we completely. It was not a new issue for the structure. It had been, I don't want to say decades, but for many, many years, it had been identified as a vulnerable spot, but left unaddressed. And it was our concern, quite frankly, that even though it was a significant investment, even at the $450,000 level, that we could not risk the structure, and given the increased activity, it seemed appropriate to act now, not wait any longer.
Okay. Then the other question I had was on line 39, the COVID-19 mitigation. You spent about 77,000 on that. Do you anticipate any more expenses in the current year regarding COVID, or are you good right now?
What line did he say? I'm sorry.
39.
I'm sorry.
It's in the contingency
I'm sorry.
table.
I was looking at.
Yep.
I thought he said 9. I couldn't find it. I mean, right now, Scott, we've gotten enough materials, equipment, supplies to cover all of the event activity that we know of and anticipate for the balance of 21, and believe we're we've been proactive for the past year in addressing this. So I don't anticipate anything that we haven't already budgeted for.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, as for 2021, we'll go to the next page here. Excuse me, a couple pages with ahead column IDs M, N, O, and P at the top. This is page 12 of your total packet here. You'll see we've made some positive adjustments to forecast relative to the last forecast we presented to the board in February. It's increased, net income has increased by just over $1 million, as noted on line 67, column O, largely a result of extending the contract term of the COVID-19 vaccine clinic event. Previously, we had forecasted that event to conclude at the beginning of May. It's now scheduled to conclude at the end of May. You also see we've had some savings in salaries, as well as our insurance program came in under budget this year. While the adjustments to forecast today are minor, we're optimistic that over the course of the next few board meetings, we'll continue to increase the net income forecast based on positive discussions we've been having with media and event planners, and more certainty regarding our event calendar holds. Marty's going to touch on this a little bit in his CEO update in just a few minutes. Are there any questions on 2021? Okay, moving on to the cash flow projection exhibits. The first one is the unrestricted cash flow. We're projected to end the year at approximately $7.1 million, which is noted on line 25 under the December month heading. And on the next page is the restricted cash flow, which is expected to end the year up. We're actually going to increase the balance of that account by $3.39 million, as noted on line 19. Management is satisfied with the projections of both of these balances and has no concerns regarding the district's ability to meet its debt or operational obligations over the next 12 months. Are there any specific questions about the cash flow statements at this time?
So the balance that you have on line 1 for April to 12.8 million, is that pretty much approximate of where you're at the beginning of the month? In essence, your end of March balance, or no?
Yes, Scott, that's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else to add on the finance side, Marty?
No.
Okay. Well, Mr. Vice Chairman, that is our financial update for the day.
All right, very good, Steve. Hearing no other questions for Steve, I do want to check in again with Alderman Bauman. It seems as he has a second device now connected. Are you with us, Alderman Bauman?
I hope so.
All right, fantastic. Okay, we hear you now. I appreciate that, Steve, for taking us through that. The next item we wanted to get to is our CEO update, and that's Marty. So, Marty, you're on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Following Steve's point talking about optimism, I'm not prepared today to go into a lot of detail on it, but we'll be doing so next week at the board meeting. We are guardedly optimistic that the activity that we're seeing now, as far as inquiries and confirmed business that was on the books as well as new business that we expect to confirm for the balance of 21 has picked up. I think one of the real catalysts to that certainly has been the penetration of vaccination, no pun intended. But when the city health department increased its capacity to 75%, up to 750 people without a safety plan approved, and then beyond that, if you had one, we really saw an uptick in people that were thinking about doing something, coming forward and sharing their event requirements and booking business. So we have not made any other modifications to the forecast other than what Steve has indicated because of the extension of the vaccination. You may have seen earlier in the week that a release went out of the Beyond Van Gogh exhibit that we have been able to attract to come to the convention center starting in July, potentially running as late as in November. That income has not been integrated into the forecast. We've held that back, quite frankly, because while we're optimistic, optimism doesn't go to the bottom line until it becomes confirmed business. And to quote our CFO, cash is king. So I don't want to identify and bake in things that we're not comfortable yet until we believe that there will be true impact. And what we don't know is what is still tentative for 21 that we have on the books that may go away. So we're playing this a little guarded and close. So even though we haven't recognized the Van Gogh, that is confirmed, it's contracted. I haven't sold a ticket yet because tickets haven't gone on sale yet, but it's that kind of activity that contributes to our level of optimism and hope that we will be able to deliver results better than what's in the 2021 budget, and will allow us to make a very aggressive 22 budget later this fall for your review.
Hey, Marty.
Yeah, Grady.
Real quick, are we engaging in any type of activity that would help us to forecast people's receptivity to attending events at the Center District, gauge their likelihood of, kind of when they think they would be interested in going back to a live event, especially in an enclosed area like the Center District. Like, for instance, I guess one of the things that kind of came to my mind about this was I saw a poll that was launched by the State Fair, and they were, kind of asking people, are you more comfortable with outdoor events? Would you be interested in going to the exhibits? That type of thing. Are we doing anything like that?
We have not initiated any of those direct surveys ourselves. We certainly are monitoring everything that we can get our hands on, both locally, regionally, and nationally. We are in regular contact with our colleagues at State Fair, at Fiserv, the Pabst Theater Group, so that I believe that we're in lockstep with what is happening in our market, but we have not engaged any outreach ourselves at this point. Okay. Moving on, 2 weeks ago, we had Visit Milwaukee come in and present to senior management. I was very interested in having them provide us with a deck and then a presentation that reinforced to our group what it is that Visit Milwaukee focuses on, how they market the convention center for meetings and conventions, as well as the role that they play in promoting not just meetings and conventions, but also the leisure market. I thought it was a very informative discussion. It just reinforced, I believe, the dialogue that continues between our two organizations and aligns our thoughts and what we're looking to achieve from both Visit standpoint and our standpoint. To that point, I have asked, and I share this with you so you're aware of it, and you'll see it on the agenda next week. I have asked Peggy Williams-Smith, the president and CEO of Visit, along with two of her colleagues, Leslie Johnson, who's the vice president of sales, and Megan Sardini, their CMO, to come in during the presentation, during the board meeting next week for about 10 minutes and do a couple of things. One, share with our board their assessment on the health of the meetings and convention business, both short and long term, as it relates to Milwaukee, the region, and nationally. And then secondly, hear from Visit directly what their action plan is, marketing plan is for the balance of 21, taking us into 22, to exploit the resurgence of business back into Milwaukee. I truly believe that you will find it informative, and it may be duplicative to some of you who are on both boards, but for those not, I think it will be insightful to get a better understanding and familiarity from those on the front line what the pulse is for the meeting and convention business, because it's clearly the driver to the restricted and unrestricted tax revenues that we depend on. So it'll provide you an opportunity to ask them directly questions about the industry that we're a part of. As far as the expansion, Mike Abrams is on deck for next week's board meeting to give a 5-10 minutes. I think that's what it'll be, because not a lot specifically has been going on with the expansion, other than a lot of design work and revisiting the numbers. But he's going to give you an update on the design schedule, the schedule of the project itself. We have issued a number of RFPs for different services in connection with preparing for the construction. So we'll give you an update on what's out there, what the status is, and what the timeline is for moving forward with those. Staying with the expansion for a couple more minutes, we continue to have regular meetings with Impression Sports and Entertainment, the group that we contracted with to help us secure naming rights and other partners for the project. Really, at this point, developing a fairly comprehensive and focused list of potential clients to go after, and expect to be on the street with something within the next 4 to 6 weeks. They're working very closely with Navigate, another firm, an analytics firm that we have engaged to work with us on the valuation of the asset currently as we know it, plus all of the assets that will be part of the expansion itself. 2 weeks ago, I believe you were sent copies of what was discussed, but we had invited a number of weeks ago, specifically to occur 2 weeks ago, an invitation to city, county, and state elected officials to get an overview of what the expansion project was, where we are with it, the timeline, and the impact we see the project having on the region. I did chuckle, Michael Maxwell and I did chuckle, because when the packet went out, Scott Mansky, who is a very dynamic personality, responded almost instantly with an email. Did I miss a meeting? You know, we could sense the urgency in Scott's response, that perhaps he wasn't a party to something that he should have been, and that was not the case. The information that was shared is information that you previously have seen, but we shared with you the deck so you could see what it is that we presented. After the presentations last, I think it was Monday of this week, we did send the deck out to everyone, which is what you got a copy of. And since those meetings have occurred, I've been asked to give a similar presentation to both the Commercial Real Estate Association as well as Bid 21, which I'll be doing later in the year in July. If there are any organizations or groups that you would like me to share that information with, happy to do so. At this point, these presentations are really just giving people an awareness and familiarity of what we're doing and how it will affect the region. But I was very pleased with the number of attendees who joined us and the feedback we've gotten since, appreciating just getting the information in front of them.
I almost emailed like Scott as well. I was like, did I miss a meeting?
Well,
I almost did the same.
and if any of you would like me to go through the deck with you, I'm happy to do so. You were not excluded from the list. It just seemed repetitive to invite you to something that you've seen in other forms. But I do like you to know what's out there, especially because you deal with a lot of the elected officials, and I didn't want you to be in a position where they might say something to you and reference something that you're on the board of and not be aware of what that was. So that's the reason for as much sharing it with you. And then lastly, a project that Steve and I continue to work on is, and with the various department heads, is assessing our ability to execute as an organization the increased event activity that we've seen on the books and have added. We were able to do things pretty much status quo with the staffing levels that we met to react to COVID. But now that we're coming out of that pandemic and seeing a real increase in event activity, we have to assess, can we support it? We're in the process of doing that, looking at the timing to bring people back from furlough, eliminate the furloughs, bring people back as needed. And I'll keep you apprised of that, but that's something that we've got to make sure as an organization we can support in two fronts. One, that we can support it from a manpower standpoint, and secondly, that we can support it from a funding standpoint. So we won't be making any decisions that have a negative impact on the finances that we've already shared with you.
Hey, Marty, I have a question.
Sure.
That's great. What about, in terms of the cost of the project and how much inflation do you have built in? And are there any concerns about inflation and construction costs and what that would mean?
I can't address that specifically today, Greg, but I will tell you that one of the things that's being worked on as we speak is re-estimating the cost of the project. Schematic design was provided a week ago Wednesday to Gilbane C.D. Smith, and what they're doing now, and will have to us by the end of April, so we'll have it for the May board meeting, is a reassessment or a comparison of what because the estimating that got us to the $419 million number was based on conceptual renderings and conceptual drawings. Now we have schematics, so they'll be taking into account the cost of materials and labor as it exists now, plus factoring in inflation. We do expect, based upon the discussions we've had with both ICON and Gilbane, to be within the budget that we have identified and the funds that we have issued.
Okay, good. Thank you.
We believed a year ago and still believe that the timing of us moving forward with this project puts us ahead of other projects in looking for materials and manpower. So I'm not saying we're going to be able to save a lot because of where we are, but we don't, at this point, we haven't been given any indication that either materials or manpower rates will increase anything other than what we had anticipated initially. And we'll obviously keep you updated as we learn of these things. One last thing before I turn it back to the vice chair is just wanted to extend the invitation once again. Next week's board meeting will be holding in the 203 meeting complex. We will be doing social distancing, giving ample space for everyone to attend in person if you care to do so. So when the invitation for the meeting comes out for next Friday, we will have a Zoom component as well if you choose not to attend in person, but we welcome we welcome you to attend in person if you care to do so. And with that, Mr. Vice Chair, I return the floor to you.
All right, thanks, Marty. Good report. I just want to give one more opportunity if anyone has any questions of Marty, anything that was covered in his report. If not, again, thanks, Marty. We'll continue to move on. The next item we wanted to do is really kind of covered in Marty's report, look at this, our April board meeting agenda to see if there are any comments, questions, requests for additions that the governance committee should take up. That document begins on page 17. That's page 17 of the deck that Michael sent out. As you see, we have the update from Visit Milwaukee that Marty talked about, our standard financial updates, CEO update, the expansion update that Marty also discussed. There's going to be a closed session on a personnel discussion that we'll talk about future board meeting dates and future discussion items. And Jim, of course, will be leading all of that. Any questions or comments to the proposed board meeting agenda for next week? All right, hearing none, I am going to turn it over to Michael, who's going to talk about our future meeting dates as we begin to conclude our session for today.
We have the board meeting next Friday at 8:30, as Marty already stated. The next Finance and Personnel Committee meeting will be Thursday, May the 13th at 8:30 in the morning. And again, that's open to Zoom as well as in person. That's all.
All right, fantastic. So hopefully everybody has those dates marked and you have secured your availability to be present for those meetings. The last item we'll talk about is if there are any future committee discussion items that anyone wants to bring to the table. Of course, since they are not on the agenda today, we won't talk about them today, but there's something that we can make sure that Jim and Marty know about to include in your future finance committee meetings. Any of those items, any of the committee members want to raise today? All right, fantastic. If not, I think at this point, we have pretty much covered all of the items that were on the agenda. And if there is nothing else, someone told me that a motion to adjourn is kind of always in order. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
There's a second.
I'll second.
All right, fantastic. We have a motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you so much for your time and consideration today.
See you next Friday. Thank you all. Are we muted? Brady.
right now. So we'll get going. Some of you already know that Jim is out of town and asked that I pitch hit in running this meeting for him. So we're going to open up and have Michael call the roll.
Mr. Joel Brennan,
Here.
Mr. Grady Crosby,
Here.
Senator LaTanya Johnson,
Here.
and Mr. Cantor is excused. We have a quorum.
All right, fantastic. So with that, in light of the fact that Joel has to go pretty soon, at this time, we're gonna depart from the agenda a little bit and we'll go right into this closed session so we can discuss these matters while Joel is here. So I'm gonna ask for a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to section 19.81 1C of the Wisconsin Code for the purpose of considering the employment, compensation, or performance of certain district employees over whom this board has jurisdiction and exercises responsibility. The committee will.
Section 19.851C.
Okay, 19.851C of the Wisconsin Code.
Mr. Vice Chair, we can fine law firms that do not correct the chairman of a meeting if you so direct me to do so.
Yeah, or we can find ones that put it in the note correctly.
Oh! Nicely.
Either one.
Robbed and served. Nicely done.
Either one, but let's hasten on. The committee will reconvene in open session following the closed session discussion of this agenda item. Do I have a motion for closed session? Is there a second?
Second.
Been
Johnson.
moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of a closed session indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so at this time, all non-committee members and those individuals asked to remain can stay in the room, but we'll mute the public line, but we'll move into our closed session at this time.
to board approval. What I would do is add a parenthetical in there that, you know, the governor, or a sentence that the committee and the board agree to take into account that level of compensation increase, which may be awarded to other members of the senior staff. Oh, I'm sorry. Grady, you've caught me on 2 number issues now. My apologies. We got her?
No, and I don't see her.
Okay. Sorry, I'm still in the room. We're just trying to get Senator Johnson back in.
I can hear you on YouTube.
Yeah, we got issues.
I could hear you saying the word parenthetical.
What's wrong? One, Sarah says we're on YouTube.
Okay.
And 2,
It
we
wasn't.
lost Latanya Johnson.
Okay, let's continue then. Oh, God, that was funny.
All right, we're ready. Is Sarah coming back in?
Yeah, she's here.
All right, fantastic. So we have reconvened in open session, and we'll pick up where we left off. And so our next order of business would be the minutes, to approve the minutes of the last committee meeting, which were sent to you in advance of this meeting. And I would ask if there are any changes, modifications, or questions regarding the minutes. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as transmitted to you prior to this meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes from our last committee meeting indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so I'll take that as unanimously approving the minutes as presented prior to this meeting. Our next item is our financial update, and we'll ask Steve to present that information to us now.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Today's financial update will include a final review of the 2020 income statement, a look at the 2021 income statement forecast, and a review of the projected restricted and unrestricted cash positions for the remainder of 2021, which are expected to remain relatively healthy and stable throughout the year. So let's start with the 2020 income statement, which is the first page of the financial packet I distributed on Tuesday, and I believe the 6th page of the packet that Michael distributed yesterday. And this has column IDs E, F, G, and H at the top of the page. This exhibit provides a comparison of the final actual unaudited year-end results to our 2020 budget. Scrolling down to line 67 in column E, you'll see net income before depreciation was budgeted at $21 million. Our actual year-end result was a $9.3 million loss noted in column F. This produced a negative variance to budget of $30 million noted in column G. 12 months ago, I'm not sure I would have thought it possible for our organization to overcome a $30 million negative swing on our income statement. And quite frankly, I would have thought that would have been financial ruin for the district. However, as we sit here today, we've proven quite the opposite. We certainly suffered financial challenges, just as so many other businesses have during this pandemic, and we still have some work to do. But in the early weeks of the pandemic, management developed and executed a two-pronged survival program that included, number one, an operational expense mitigation plan, and number two, a capital restructuring plan that in combination positioned us to weather the worst of the COVID storm. And while survival was certainly a sufficient and acceptable goal for 2020, we went one step further and doubled down on our own future and borrowed over $400 million to fund what will become a critically important economic driver for our city and region for years to come. You've heard me and Marty reference BPX often during these meetings. This is our credo of how we go about doing our business on a day in and day out basis. And in that vein, I can say without pretension that I'm proud of the work and sacrifice our team has put in over the last year that allowed us as an organization to survive 2020 while simultaneously building for the future. And I'm thankful for the trust that the board has given to management to not only adopt our recommendations, but then having the confidence in us to execute them effectively. 3 years from now, when we open the doors of the expanded convention center for the first time, I think we'll look back at 2020 and say that it was an inflection point for our organization in terms of how we value the present and how we think about and plan for the future. There is hyperbole in that summary of our income statement, but I think it accurately reflects my thoughts regarding 2020 and what that $30 million negative budget variance really means for our organization. Marty, is there anything you'd like to add there?
Just that I don't think I would have ever used the word inflection point to describe 2020, but that is an interesting way to look at it. And certainly 2020 was a memorable year for all of us, and one that I'm glad is in our rearview mirror. So continue, Mr. Marsh.
If we turn the page that has column IDs M, N, O, and P at the top, which is 2 pages on, you'll see not much has changed from the last forecast that we provided to the board. You'll see on line 67, column O, we're up $500K, largely a result of better than forecasted December tax results, as noted on line 35, column O. One item to note on this page is naming rights revenue, line 11. For both 2020 and 2021, we reduced our projected revenue by $43K per year, specifically $43,750 per year as we worked with UWM on revised terms for the current contract year due to the pandemic. Marty, would you like to discuss that briefly?
Just as a point of information, in the late summer, early fall, had a reach out from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, indicating that given the impact that COVID had on the event activity in general, but specifically the event activity in the UWM Panther Arena, that they were interested in discussing some sort of modification due them under the force majeure language. We had a number of months in discussion. I spent a fair amount of time speaking with Kirk about the force majeure language in the agreement, and in the spirit of the partnership between the two organizations, really the end of last week, reached an amicable agreement that we would make what in essence actually is a 25% reduction in the payment due us for contract year July 1 through June 30 of 21, which overlaps, as Steve indicated, our 2 fiscal years, which is why it's spread out over those 2 years. He's recognized it in the year-end actuals for 20, and will be, you'll see later in the adjusted forecast for 2021 reflecting that additional reduction in naming rights.
Thank you, Marty. We are almost finished with the 2020 audit field work. If there are any other changes to these accounts, I would expect them to be very minor and immaterial. And just a reminder that Baker Tilly, our auditor, will be here at the May board meeting to provide the 2020 final audit report. Are there any questions on 2020? The next page is a final look at the 2020 CapEx budget. Our total expenditures came in about $500K less than originally budgeted. Reducing CapEx spend was part of our expense mitigation strategy that we adopted in April of 2020 when the pandemic first hit in order to preserve cash for ongoing operational needs. To that end, we prioritize projects that focus on life safety and security, as well as making smart investments in systems and infrastructure that are critical to the business operation. I'm proud of how our operations and building services and facilities departments have continually responded in the affirmative when asked to do more with less. While we perhaps did not invest in everything that we would have liked in 2020, we certainly made smart decisions that set us up for success in 2021 and beyond. Any questions on CapEx summary for 20? Okay. As for 2021, if you page through the 2021 income statement packet to the page with column IDs M, N, O, and P at the top, you'll see we've made some positive adjustments to forecast, increasing it by just over $1.19 million, as noted on line 67, largely a result of extending the contract term of the COVID-19 vaccine clinic event. Previously, we had forecasted the event to conclude at the beginning of May. It's now scheduled to conclude at the end of May. While the adjustments to forecast today are minor, we're optimistic that over the course of the next few board meetings, we'll continue to increase the net income forecast based on positive discussions we've been having with meeting and event planners and more certainty regarding our event calendar holds. And Marty's going to touch on this a little bit during the CEO update. Moving on to the cash flow projection exhibits, you'll see that unrestricted cash is projected to end the year at approximately $7.1 million, which is noted on line 25 under the December column heading. And on the next page, restricted cash is expected to end the year up by $3.39 million. Again, this is the reserve balance we have in place to fund our debt service, and that is noted on line 19. Management is satisfied with both of these projections and has no concerns regarding the district's ability to meet its debt or operational obligations over the next 12 months. Are there any questions on 2021? Okay, Mr. Vice Chairman, that is the financial update.
Very good. Thank you so much, Steve. Okay, at this point, we'll turn it over to Marty for our CEO update. Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I will certainly go into more detail in the full board meeting next week, but just to give you an overview, Steve has just referenced some degree of optimism about 2021 on the event activity side. I think a real benchmark for business in 2020 happened a couple of weeks ago when the Health Department of the City of Milwaukee increased its capacity for not needing an approved safety plan to 75% of capacity up to 750 people, and then exceptions to that with approved by the City Health Department safety plans. Shortly after that announcement came out, both Visit Milwaukee and we were very proactive in getting that announcement to different groups that we had been speaking with, try and get them to either confirm that their event was going to happen in 2020 or confirm us as a new event in our building. We successfully hosted a series of volleyball tournaments in the exhibition hall because of this increased capacity. We've hosted a number of dance competitions in the theater. We're seeing a real increase in interest. We announced last week, I believe it was, that we were bringing an exhibit called Beyond Van Gogh into the exhibition hall starting mid-July, running potentially as late as November and into November of this year. That event specifically has not been added into the forecast for 21. We're really holding that back in that, yes, we are optimistic, but the other side of my mouth is we need to make sure that we don't get hit by some disappointments in the next couple of months that we wind up trying to react to later in the year. So we've held out an uptick in the forecast because of that event, because there is still some degree of uncertainty. Yet, as Steve said, we hope over the next couple of months to be able to reflect increases in improvements to the net income because events are happening. And as I'll share with you next week, a list of events that have already confirmed for 21 that were not in our original budget. So more to come on that. 2 weeks ago, at my request, Peggy Williams-Smith and a number of her direct reports from Visit Milwaukee gave a fairly comprehensive presentation to the senior management team of the Wisconsin Center District, in that while a few of us work very closely with the Visit staff, not everyone does. And just seemed very timely and important that there be a true understanding from our organization of truly what the value of Visit is to not just our organization, but the region in total. And I thought they did a very good job sharing with the group their role in selling not only the convention center for meetings and conventions, but also the city of Milwaukee, the region, and as part the state of Wisconsin. It gives the group, I think, a far deeper understanding of the role that Visit plays in driving a significant revenue component to us, which is hotel tax as well as food, beverage, rental car taxes. Staying with that point to Visit, I have invited, and you'll see it on the agenda for the board meeting when you get it next week. I have asked Peggy to, along with Leslie Johnson, who is the Vice President of Sales, and Megan Sardini, who's the CMO for Visit Milwaukee, to give a 10-minute presentation to the board on two topics. One, to give you a firsthand report from them is their assessment of the state of the meeting and convention business, both short and long term. And then secondly, to share with you the initiatives they have in place for the balance of 21 to impact meetings and convention business as well as the leisure market, which we don't care who's staying in the hotel rooms as long as they're staying in the hotel rooms and paying occupancy tax. So two important sectors that Visit will be giving you an update on next week. Adding as part of the agenda as well will be Mike Abrams from ICON. Mike will be giving a brief update on where we are with the different components of the expansion. Specifically, he'll make you aware, give you an update on where we are with the RFP process, what's been issued, when it was issued, and when we expect to hear back and make decisions. Another will be where we are on the cost estimating and the design process. Schematic designs were due last week. Gilbane CD Smith have them, and they're now doing a comparison, which will ultimately be what were the estimates of the project when they spec'd it out a year ago, this past March, on the concept design, and then what's the updated estimate if there is any variation based on the schematic design that's been developed over the past several months since then. 2 weeks ago, Senator Johnson participated in one of them, but we had sent out an invitation to elected officials from the city, county, and state, inviting them to hear a presentation on the overall, what is the expansion and how do we believe it will impact the city and the region. We did 3 different sessions, and I felt they were very well attended, and we did share with the board members the presentation subsequent to the final presentation happening. And if there's any more information you'd like, feel free to reach out to me. If there are any other groups that you would like to see this presentation given to, happy to do so. I've already been scheduled to later this month to give that presentation to the Commercial Real Estate Association and to the Board of Directors for Bid 21 in July. So happy to get the word out on this project and making sure people truly appreciate the value it will have to southeastern Wisconsin. Lastly, just as an ongoing course of doing business and being the steward of the organization, in reacting to reality, not just speculation, we have seen an uptick in event activity as a result of the vaccination, but as well as the volleyballs that I've spoken to, the dance competitions, graduations that we had not expected some to occur. We've got a very healthy schedule of graduations, primarily in the arena, because of the added space and ability to adhere to social distancing requirements, but in the theater as well for some smaller graduations. Anyway, Steve and I are working very closely with the department heads, assessing what the manpower needs are for the balance of this year to make sure that we don't drop the ball in any of the events that we are executing. And then as importantly is making sure we've got the manpower in place to execute. Do we have the resources to fund the manpower? Because we are not going to make any expenses that we're not confident will be offset by the increase in event income to pay for those expenses. So that's an ongoing process and just something that we continue to monitor and we'll make adjustments as the event calendar warrants. And Mr. Chairman, I think that's Mr. Vice Chairman. Didn't mean to offend Jim or promote you on, but that concludes my comments for now, Mr. Vice Chairman.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the promotion as well. Any questions for Marty? All right, hearing none. Yeah, hearing none. You just can continue to congratulate you and the leadership team. I don't know how many organizations can take a $30 million bogey and turn it around and at this point be talking about positive outlooks for the near-term future. So just kudos, great job. I'm just always excited about the things that are yet to come for this organization because we have some great things just right there on the horizon as well. So at this point, we want to pivot and just have a review of our April Board of Directors meeting agenda to see if there are any questions or comments or proposed additions that we need to consider for our meeting next week. As you can see, most of it is fairly standard. Marty talked about the fact that Visit Milwaukee is going to come in and do an update. We have our standard financial update that we've heard from Steve and the CEO update from Marty. CAA Icon will give an expansion update. We will convene in a closed session to discuss the personnel item that we discussed today with the full board. And that's pretty much it for the upcoming agenda for next week. Any questions, comments, corrections, or additions to that? Proposed additions? All right, very well. It's all minds are clear, crystal clear. I love that. So if there aren't any, then Michael is going to go over some future dates as we begin to wrap up for today.
As mentioned before, the board meeting is next Friday, the 16th at 8:30. You're welcome to come in person. We will also have the Zoom option. If in person, it will be in room 203 in the convention center. And the next governance committee meeting is Thursday, May the 13th at 9:45 in the morning. Back to you, Grady.
Okay, good deal. So that allows everybody to kind of govern their calendars accordingly. Hey, Marty, do you have, or Michael, do we know if there are a number of board members planning to attend in person next week? Are we polling board members or what?
I do not know yet. I typically send out the invite after this meeting, so as
Okay.
to confuse people with meeting dates and times. So I will send it out today. I will probably have a better idea next Tuesday.
Grady, as a reference point for the February board meeting, we had, I believe, 3 of the board members, plus Jim, 4 board members were in person, with plenty of room for more. So we will have based upon the RSVP, we'll have the table set accordingly.
Okay, yeah, I'm anticipating that more board members are vaccinated and starting to get out. I'm kind of on the fence. So I'll make up my mind. So Michael, you may see me be on the fence and say, keep the option open for both.
As long as you attend, whether it's virtually or in person, we're happy, but in person would be great.
All right, very good, very good. All right, so that's all that we have today. I appreciate everyone being here and appreciate Joel, 2 platooning for us, manning 2 meetings and making himself available. Always appreciate Senator Johnson's participation and input as well. I think we got a lot done here today, even in Jim's absence, but we certainly will welcome him back as soon as he gets back. But now it's always appropriate to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Senator Johnson.
Can we get a second from Joel?
Second.
All right, he chimed in. Joel is a trooper. Fantastic. Any discussion on that? No discussion. It's an appropriate motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? None. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Grady. Nice job. Nice job. Thank you, Senator Johnson. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.